Welcome to the Sound Leadership Podcast for the silent superheroes of L&D, HR and leadership. Hit subscribe, give us a follow and leave your comments. I'm your host, Dan Boniface, and with me is co-host Darren Draper. In this episode, we're tackling one of the most powerful elements of leadership, communication. From strategies that cut through the noise, to feedback models that build trust, to the coaching approaches that transform performance. We'll show you why communication is the backbone of leadership and how you can apply it today. Darren, good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Communication is huge, isn't it, in terms of leadership?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest things. And, you know, as we unpack this topic, I think a little bit of reframing around what communication is and why we do it is really important. And it's such a vast topic to, explore and also to understand.
You've got a story for us, haven't you?
Let's start with the story. So we're talking about communication. So a professor stood before his philosophy class and he had some items that were in front of him. And when he began the class, he wordlessly picked up a very large and empty mayonnaise jar and proceeded to fill it with golf balls. He then asked the students if the jar was full. They agreed that it was. The professor then picked up a box of pebbles and poured them into the jar. And he shook the jar lightly and the pebbles rolled into all the open areas between the golf balls. He again asked the students again whether the jar was full. They said it was. The professor next picked up a box of sand and poured it into the jar. And of course the sand filled all the empty space in the jar. Again, was the jar full? Students, yes. The professor then produced 2 beers from under the table and poured the entire contents into the jar, which effectively filled the empty space between the sand. The students laughed. Now, said the professor as the laugh subsided, I want you to recognise that this jar represents your life. The golf balls are the important things, your family, your children, your health, your friends, your favourite passions. And if everything else was lost and only they remained, your life would still be full. The pebbles are the other things that matter, like your job, your house, your car, and the sand is everything else, all the small stuff. However, if you put the sand into the jar first, he continued, there's no room for the pebbles or the golf balls. And the same goes for life. If you spend all your time and energy on the small stuff, you will never have room for the things that are important to you. So take care of the golf balls first, the things that really matter. There will always be time to clean the house and mow the lawn, because that is just sand. And one of the students raised her hand and inquired what the beer represented. And the professor smiled and said, I'm glad you asked. The beer just shows you, no matter how full your life may seem, there's always room for a couple of beers. And I think that's just a real good example of a great story, a real positive way to start the podcast. But also communication there around the language that was used. He had a visualization of the jar to represent it so people could connect to it. You know, those funny things like the beer at the end, that's the memorable things that people will hold on to. And that's the importance of communication. We just think sometimes communication is the words that we're talking about now, but actually it's so much more. And the more reflective, the more we understand it, the more impactful our communication can be.
Brilliant. I love the story as well, and I love the build up to it, and expertly delivered as well. Great communication skills. I think actually part of that, and I'm kind of jesting with that, but when we talk about communication, often when we talk about presentations, public speaking, we talk about becoming trainers on our trainer course, we talk about starting with impact. If you're a good storyteller, tell a story, because it has a big impact like that. It's memorable. If you're not so confident on the storytelling, you could tell a joke. If you're not great at joke telling, tell a fact, tell a figure, give some stats, give something with a bit of impetus and that has an impact at the start of your delivery, and it engages the audience. And when we talk about what communication is, like you say, it's not just the words we use, but it's the engagement that we're getting. How do we get people on board? How do we get people to understand our message? And using metaphors, analogies, learning storytelling, learning the flow of your presentation, for example, allows you to land that message it makes it more memorable. And the reason that happens is to do with the neuroscience and how our brains, the neural pathways, how they connect together, because we'll take one bit of information, another bit of information, it's like us plugging it together, therefore we are more likely to remember it. So communication is crucial, and it's not just about us as well, which we'll pick up throughout. Let's touch on the different types of communication to start off with them.
Yeah, so you've obviously got verbal, the words we use, the sounds we make, because it is more than the words we use. People seem to take verbal as just words, but actually, you know, if we're talking to someone and someone goes, that's a verbal communication. You know, straight away we can all think of a car garage and going in there, and we all know that that's a, you know, £500 added onto our bill from it. So it is just more than the words we use. We obviously have non-verbal, that's based around our body language, the eye contact, you know, if someone's looking down, and all of those things that can have a real big impact. You've got, I guess, coaching communication as well is, you know, how do we, and a lot of that's around the questions that we use. You know, are we really inquisitive and looking to learn from that conversations by the questions that we asking, or are they just high level, how are you today? You know, how often do people walk around, how are you today? Yeah, I'm all right. Cool. What does that actually mean? I don't feel important because they've asked me that question, because they probably ask another 20 people that. What would make me feel really important is if when I said, yeah, I'm okay, they went, oh, okay. What's made you okay? You know, what went well last night? How was your evening? Things like that. And then we're in a world now of digital body language, which, Dan, expand a little bit more on that.
Digital body language is understanding when we're communicating with others via social media, WhatsApp, email, Teams, Slack, those channels where it's harder to initially read someone's response, because when we're face to face, like you say, we might get the moment, we might get the surprised look, we might get the nod of recognition, validation, but when we are remote, that becomes a little bit tougher. So it's understanding, if I construct my email, for example, or my WhatsApp message in this manner, is that going to land with the other person? And you'd mentioned it on other podcasts as well, where often we will, and we find this a lot in leadership, where people are struggling to communicate effectively because they're of the thought process of, well, I've told them this 5 times in email. Yes, but how have you told them? What have you told them? What was the message? Well, look, you can see the message here, and it's this whole jumbled up email with no construct to it, no logical process to it. We're missing the point. The point is hidden within all the text, or we do that via a WhatsApp, or even if it's a voice note, something like that. And typically as humans, we waffle on a little bit too much, and I can feel myself doing that now. So it's about getting to the point, get your message across. So the digital body language is understanding how someone might react to the message that you're sending to them, and just thinking ahead, is that something that's going to frustrate them, annoy them, make them angry? Is there opportunity for misinterpretation around it? And let's be really clear. So before we're sending communication, let's know exactly what our objective is. What is the purpose of sending that communication?
Yeah, and you know, it's so important because we don't have those non-verbal clues in that style of communication, that people interpret things differently. And that will be then the words that we've written down. Maybe you've put something in red, or you've put it in capital letters. People have different meanings behind it. So again, we've got to look further than what we're trying to say into the recipient's position and go, how are they going to interpret? Because remember, communication isn't actually about us, it's about them. And if someone doesn't understand what we've said, you might as well not have communicated in the first place. So why would you want to waste your time having to say something again where you could have taken some time on going, how are they going to interpret it at the other end?
It's worth going back and having a look at the Chris Roebuck episode that we recorded. We're very lucky to have him on the show as a HR Hall of Famer. And something he implemented back when he was working for TfL in the late 90s was this principle called team talk. And he made it really simple of how to get this message across the whole organisation, in a large organisation, where it come from executive level and it resonated throughout. And he was talking about how he'd said to his leaders that you can't change slide 1, that's the top line information, that can't change. But slide 2, you can change, so it is pitched at the level that you're working at with your teams. And then that went on, so you're able to not change slide 1, not change slide 2, but you can add your content, and without making that too big a document. But it's a really nice way of getting clear communication from top to bottom.
I also think we talk about scaffolding in our trainer courses, and I think conversations could go so much better if people use that technique. And what I mean by scaffolding is we need to test people's foundation, and we need to know that the people that we're talking to understand the foundation before we go up the levels. And that's what we must do, is we must think, who am I talking to? Will they understand what I'm saying? Or do I need to build a foundation that then I can build upon? Because you can't start your scaffolding on your roof. It needs that level behind it.
Exactly right. You don't put the roof on first, do you? You build the foundations for the people that you're communicating to. Acronyms are really dangerous around that. And I've just done that a minute ago saying TfL, Transport for London. So the first time you use an acronym on that day in that meeting, explain what it means, because there may be someone in the room that doesn't understand it. Let's move away from assumptions that everyone knows what we're talking about. Let's be really clear around our communication. And we're going to go into that now in terms of how to do that. Darren, give us the lowdown on our model, which we've called Impact, because hopefully it has an impact on the people, the audience that you're communicating to.
A double-edged acronym. We love it. So, yeah, we want our communication to have an impact. And so, impact stands for intention. So what do you want out of it? Why are you having this conversation? And actually, a lot of conversations we have when we talk about we're time poor, why am I having this conversation in the first place, is really important. What message do I want to land? So think about 20 minutes after this conversation, what are they going to remember from it? Okay? That's your core message that you want to deliver. Think about your persona and your audience. So that's thinking about me, and that's thinking about them. Okay? We talk about emotional awareness. How am I going into this conversation? What am I thinking? What NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, what reframing do I need to put myself in for this to be a success? And then what do I need to do for the audience? So whether this is a big audience or a one-on-one, do they need to do any prep before we have this conversation, etc.? And then timing. Okay. When is the best time to deliver this message? Friday afternoon, any message, don't even try. But a lot of us will do Monday morning and all of those things. But actually, the best time is different. It's not a one size fits all for the people, for us, for the situation. So just understand this is the best. So actually, let's say you've just witnessed something that you want to give someone feedback on. Well, is this the best time? Well, it could be, because it's live in their mind. They can still picture it. Great. Also, it might not be, because maybe they're feeling emotions from it. They move into a defensive mode. So starting to analyse all that maximises our chances of a successful impact in the conversation and getting the outcome that we're looking for.
Impact, message, persona, audience, coaching, and timing. Persona always jumps out at me when we talk about this, and it's, for me, often the bit that misses out. And what we mean by persona is, how are you showing up? So you as the leader, you've got to go and have this challenging conversation. You've got to go and present to your team, to the community. How are you showing up? Right from, what are you wearing? And how are you going to communicate the first 30 seconds of your message? What is your message? How passionate are you about that? And we talk about, if we give passion, if we give energy, people are more likely to buy into the message. They're more likely to get on board with it. What are you doing after? So when you've given that message, are you exit stage and get out of there? Or are you hanging around to answer questions? Are you available? So all of this comes into persona. And again, a bit like you said there with, 20 minutes after, can they remember the message? 20 minutes after, 2 months down the line, 2 years down the line, what do you want them to say about you for when you delivered that message? And this may be anything from that we need you for an extra hour on Thursday night to we've got a huge change coming in the business. We've bought out another business. We've got an acquisition going on we've got some redundancies going on. So it could be anything. How do you want to be remembered from that message? And you lead with those values.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the time for people to remember that message, we need to ensure that our message is clear, concise and consistent. Because you rightly say it's for them to remember it 20 minutes afterwards, it's probably got to be clear and concise. But for them to remember it 2 months later, it needs to be consistent. It needs to be embedded. They need to understand that consistency creates trust as well, because you're consistently saying the same message, you're delivering it in a consistent way. That builds trust with your team. So if we can always keep those communications clear, concise and consistent, that will help that message being delivered. Consistency
is underrated in terms of leadership. And I think we look at soft skills, and again, we've done a podcast on that consistency is right up there, especially around communication, because, I think we've all worked for those leaders and managers before where we don't quite know, there's a lot of ambiguity. We don't quite know what's expected of us, or we're lacking a vision. How do you know where you're heading and you don't know how to get there if you don't know where you're going? So the consistency in message is crucial. And again, if us as leaders, we're implementing a change, for example, and then 2 months down the line, we're given a different message, you got chaos starting to come.
It's just wasted energy.
Yeah,
it's wasted
absolutely.
Productivity. That is wasted bottom line potential. Where if you're consistent, there could be changes in your vision, but if you deliver it when you need to, people are used to pivoting in certain ways and they don't go, oh my God, I've done all this and it's got to go thrown in the bin. What they do is go, how can I adapt my approach to fit this new vision and learn from what I've got? That's what what high performing businesses are able to do, is go, we need to adapt slightly. How can we pivot instead of how can we start again because we've just wasted this time because there hasn't been clear, concise communication.
Yeah, absolutely. So that when we're communicating, lead with impact, and let's use the 3 C's: clear, concise, consistent. Tell us about Radical Candor from
Yep.
This is from Kim Scott, isn't it?
Kim Scott, yep. So Radical Candor sits in a place where it goes, I care for someone personally, so I'm going to challenge them directly. And that is the space of Radical Candor. Is actually, when we give feedback to someone, because it's based around feedback, it's because I care about them personally. I want them to improve. I want them to get better. So I have to give them that message clear. We've all worked with someone that cares about me personally, but doesn't give me any feedback. Well, I don't want to be in that because I can't grow. We've all been with someone else that doesn't care about me personally, so just challenges me directly in not a very nice way. And there's those other people that don't care about me personally and don't challenge directly, they just don't care about me. Actually, showing Radical Candor shows we care about someone. But to really show that we care about someone, what we need to understand is it's not always about us, it's about others. And about going, what can I learn about this situation? So a lot of the time when we do communication, we start with us. To really move into that coaching style of communication, how can I move more into that questioning? How can I ask something? How can I understand how someone else feels, what someone else saw, why someone else done it? Because then it starts empowering us with even more information. By going straight into this is my message, boom, there it is, that doesn't empower people. They don't feel trust in it. They feel like I'm just being told what to do. Lead with the questions, And from those questions, from your active listening, then you can drive the conversation from what you wanted.
A friend of the show, Chris Roebuck, I've mentioned him already, that his research shows him that you can get 30% or up to 30% more effort from 60% of your people simply by showing you care. That is an incredible stat. I'll say it again. Up to 30% more effort from 60% of your people because you care. That's it. You can do that. You can transform your business by showing you care. And then it's the challenge directly bit. And when we're asked about, how do I show authority as a leader? I may have just moved from being a peer and I've been promoted to middle management, senior management, wherever that might be in a business. How do I show authority around that? Well, care about them. And challenge directly to me is, I interpret that as, say it as it is. Let's be open and honest. Let's not hide things. We don't need to fluff it up with a whole load of other information, but it's also not being brutal. It's still leading with empathy. So our other soft skills, our emotional intelligence absolutely come into that. But when you get those two and you get a nice balance of it, that's when you get a really strong relationship.
Yeah, it just, when we're starting to move into that zone where, we talk about authority a little bit, and authority for me isn't needed because you're not better than them. You've just got a different job. So what you're actually looking for is, how can I work with this person? What limiting beliefs are there within someone else? So the first thing you can do if you don't feel like you've got authority is ask them how you can work better together. How are they feeling that you've been promoted? It may hurt us, but it's not about us, it's about them. So they go, well, I thought I was going to get the job and, I feel like I've got the skills and I feel like I've been in the role for a long period. So I feel a bit like let down that I haven't got the job. Okay, well, how can I work with you that when I move on, that you will get the job? What feedback have you been given that we can work on to help? Straight away, you've gone into that questioning instead of that, I'm going to protect myself and want to show authority. So again, if you start with that questions, that's when you'll go, they really want to listen to me instead of they just want to give me information.
Yeah, good. Like that approach. Another thing that we can use is called bridging, and we take this from media training and from our sister company, Media First. And we use ABC. So this works really well. If you get asked some questions that you're not quite expecting, or you don't quite know how to answer in that moment, or you don't want to answer in that moment, we use bridging. So first of all, acknowledge the question. If we don't acknowledge it, we're getting ourselves in a sticky situation. We're putting people offside. And acknowledge might just be, Darren, great question. I'm going to park that and pick that up later on. Great question. Let me come back to you. It might be that we then move away from that and we build on it. So we might then move to another area. So great question, Darren. Love how you've linked that into topic that we're talking about. Let me now get my message across. And we don't get distracted into, it might be around, classic examples around sort of office politics, isn't it? Or personal issues, something like that. And we might move away from that and say, look, that's not helpful in this moment in time. Happy to talk to you after. Let's move on. And then, by the way, here's my message that I'm trying to land. So we communicate that part after. But a big part for me is, if we ignore, we're putting someone offside, we're creating conflict. Acknowledge is a great way to move forwards.
But I also think acknowledgement is so important in all aspects of communication. Actually, just by saying to someone, that's a really good point. That's acknowledging, that's verifying that they have been heard, that they feel important, that they feel like they've been trusted. Too many times, especially in meetings, conversation just moves from one to the other, to the other, to the other. That doesn't acknowledge what's already been said. What actually happens in most meetings I attend is people say the same things in more elaborate words. And a meeting that was an hour long has now turned into 2 hours because everyone goes, well, I've got to have my say. Let's acknowledge someone, because when you acknowledge someone, You can then build on what they've said based on Neil Rackham's communication theory that we talk about on another podcast. So by going, actually, I've heard what you said. I think that's really good, but we could also do X, Y, Z. You're building, you're working as a team, you're creating that innovation. If you fail to acknowledge, you fail to support, you're not building. You're just coming up with another idea. You're a team. Work together. Don't work as a group of individuals. Work together. And that starts off with acknowledging what people have said, and then you can build on it.
Let's link that back in with emotional intelligence as well, that if someone's telling us something, you know, maybe got some personal stuff going on, for example, it's the difference for me between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy is, oh, I feel really sorry for you. What can I do to help you? This isn't a good situation. Empathy is, sounds like you're going through a really tough time at the moment. Tell me about it, if you're willing to, and then let me see if I can help you. Let me see if I can offer up some advice. Let me see if we can get you the right support. So the difference between oh, that sounds terrible, that sounds awful, to hey, it sounds like you're having a tough time. What can I do to support you? And it's just small tweaks, but in terms of communication, how does that make the other person feel in that moment? And we can take that another step of, this is coaching principles as well, but works in all walks of life in terms of leadership, that when we lead with the ask, when we find out what the other person is feeling, we're in a much better space. But when we ask, what are you thinking, or what is on your mind, they're very deep questions that are inviting you to share your thoughts, versus why did you feel like that? What happened? A bit more surface level questions. How often, and you think about this right now, when was the last time someone asked you directly, what are you thinking? Or what is on your mind? They're really powerful questions. Very, very simple. What invites you into the question? It invites you to give the answer. It's the intent behind it. It's I genuinely care. I want to hear this information to see if I can help you. If not, I'll find someone else that can do it. Thinking, mind, I want to know what's in your brain. Not me feeding you information, not me trying to manipulate. I want to know what's going on in there so that I can try and support you, or try and find you the right person, support you, or help you with a route out of that situation. So again, when we communicate, let's think about our questioning techniques around it. What are some of the benefits of strong communication?
I'm trying to bring it down to a few words because it's exponential. And again, people just have to think, who have they got the best relationships to, and who do they communicate best to? You know, you can think about your family, your friends and things like that. That's probably where your best communication is. And that is because normally you are generally interested in what they're saying. You have an emotional attachment to them. You haven't gone, I'm their boss, time's poor, how can I get this done as quickly as possible? Actually, you've just listened. And most of the time we start those conversations with a question. We don't normally walk in at the end of the day and go, you've had a bad day. You go, how's your day been? You know, and that's my recommendation to all, is if you just lead with that question, whatever happens, you can just create better human connection. And when we start creating better human connection, we build better trust. We get more consistent performance from our team. And going back to what Chris said about that we can improve performance by over 30% just by treating people as a human being. And that's what you're doing. You're just validating them. And in the end, you're creating innovation. You're creating growth because it's more than you. If you're a manager that doesn't communicate very well and holds things to themselves, or people don't understand what you're saying, it can never be more than you. And however good you are, you and someone else will always be better. You and 3 people will be even better. You and 10 people will on the side. And that's the opportunity that you can create. Add into, you know, retention figures because people feel seen, you know, that will improve. Because just by being heard, listened to, ask questions, you're validating of who they are and the skill set that they bring.
As you're talking there, I'm reflecting on a moment that it's not always the big communications that make the difference. To me, it's the small things. And I'm thinking wider scale than being at work. I'm thinking life, that someone messaged me a few days ago and said, thinking of you and your family. That's all it said. I think it was a little heart emoji on the back of it, but that's all it said. And it's not the words, it's the intent behind that communication and the thought process that that person has taken their time out of their day. And okay, it's only 10 seconds to write a WhatsApp, but there's probably some thinking time in there that's gone, I'm going to message Dan and just check in. How does that make me feel? Like, that person's a genuine friend. So it's the little gestures in communication that have a bigger impact. And we have to talk about the ripple effect, don't we? You know, that's just a very small pebble that's gone in the middle of the pond and it's rippled out, because who did I tell about that? I've told my wife. I've told my family about it. I've gone back to her and her husband. And then, like, the impact of that is huge on that one person just taking less than a minute.
And it shows the importance of empathy, not sympathy. Because if that message started with, I know you probably feel rough today, suddenly you could be, which you'll go, yeah, I am. Or, no, I'm not. Should I be? And you'll put in emotion. So just saying, I'm thinking about you. That's it. Just shows I'm coming from a place of empathy. Because I'm not telling you how you should feel or how I think you're feeling. I'm giving you an emotion that I think's the really powerful bit. But you're right. It's the things we do every single day. That's what will define. Because the more we have conversations, the more we get to know people, their verbal, non-verbal cues, the better and more deeper our conversations can be with them to get the outcomes we want.
Somebody just said there, one of my top tips around communication, know people. And I don't mean know them at work. I mean, know them personally. It goes back to Radical Candor, doesn't it? But know them personally, because once you start to understand people, what makes them tick, insights into, you go down to, what football team they support, to challenges they're having at home, to all kinds of aspects on the scale of, positives to negatives. But the more you understand someone, the more you can support them and work effectively with them. Let's talk about high performance and how we achieve this through our SBI model. So talk us through that.
Cool. So again, it's a feedback model, and we like a model that people can take away. And this is a real quick thing to make our, communication a bit more that concise, consistent, clear message. And SBI is based on situation, behaviour, impact. Because when we give feedback often, it's flowered with emotion, whereas what this model does is take all emotion out. So what we say is situation. This is the situation that I saw you in. Okay? So I see that you were dealing with a customer at that point, helping them with X, Y, Z situation. The behaviour that I saw from you was A, B, C. So I saw you talk to the customer, explain the products that were on offer really well. However, when they asked a follow-up question, you seemed unsure on these things. The impact of that on the customer was they could have lost faith in the product that you were selling. Fact, fact, fact. Now, caveat, before you move to SBI, ask first, tell later. So you ask a question, you can lead with, how was that interaction with the customer? Oh, it was really good. Okay, well, I've got some feedback for you. Or, do you know what, I was a little bit unsure on the product and that seemed to have an impact on them. Because actually that's used that, and all you need to do then is start to confirm what they're thinking. SBI, really important. Situation, behaviour, impact. If it was a positive outcome and you're just giving them positive feedback, say thank you, well done at the end. If it's a developmental feedback, ask them what they're going to do next. What would they do differently if they were having that conversation that then moves that conversation away from me back onto the other person?
Agreed. Up front, ask first, tell later. It does a lot of the hard work for you as a leader, but it empowers the other person. More importantly, it gives them the opportunity to share their voice. And as the leader, you then either go, yeah, totally agree, situation, behaviour, impact, or I've got a slightly different opinion on that. I witnessed something else. Here is what I observed, situation, behaviour, impact. And then in our coaching terms, we talk about what is your first next step. So off the back of that, what are you going to do differently? What are you going to implement? How's that going to work? Who needs to be involved in it? So we start to get into the coaching elements as well. But SBI empowers high performance because we're empowering the individual and we're giving them autonomy over what to do next. And it brings back our personal responsibility model, so awareness responsibility model, where we're giving them the options. The choice is theirs after that to then think about, okay, well, thank you, I'll take on board your feedback. I'm going to ignore it. Okay, that's your choice. Thanks for the feedback. That's really useful. I'm going to go and implement this, or work out how to implement this. I need some time to go away and reflect on it. Or you've given me a really quick win like an SBI. I can go and implement this right now. You can use this right now. As soon as you come off, listen to the podcast, etc., you can go and implement this stuff. So it's your choice. You make these decisions and you take personal responsibility for making sure that it happens. And that, to me, is how you create that high performance environment. Top 3 leadership sound bites then.
Cool. So coaching questions transforms communication into performance. Lead with those questions, ask it. And when we start leading with questions, we might not get the input that we expected because people aren't used to it. Keep asking those questions. Start with a question. People will be trained. People will come to conversations with you better informed. Better communication builds a culture of trust and responsibility. Okay? And we talked about 30% improvement from just treating people as people. Create that trust. Because the more you communicate, the chances are the more others will communicate to you. And the outcome of communication, the last one, is it's not about you, it's about them. It's about the receiver of the information. So actually we need to be the people that adapt, and we need to understand them to get the message across that we want to.
Absolutely. Remember, communication isn't about what we say, isn't just about what we say. It's about how do we make people feel? How are we going to communicate it? And I would recommend before any communication, you take a moment. Sometimes we're in a communication situation where we do need to, we're in the heat of the battle, as it were, and we need to think very quickly. But even in those moments, taking a second, just pause and then give your response is enough to get clarity, to get our clear, concise, consistent message across. So let's not rush things. Preparation, planning is absolutely key when we're communicating, to be really clear on what our purpose is and then get that message to land. And then we follow on from that and we talk about how do we give feedback. Well, using models like SBI, ask first, tell later, and then the coaching aspects come in of, great, we've understood a situation, now we've understood the impact of it. What am I going to do differently? How am I going to use this to make an impact and take personal responsibility for our actions and inspire that in others? Darren, thank you. Very good. Thank you for listening as well. Leave some comments and let us know the one communication habit that you're going to change as a result of this episode. And as I say, thank you very much for listening. Please hit subscribe. Tell your friends, your family, your colleagues about the podcast. It helps us grow, and then we can help more people take personal responsibility for their actions. And we'll see you next time on Sound Leadership. The Sound Leadership podcast was produced by Media First. To learn more about the media crisis and communications training, visit mediafirst.co.uk. The editor and producer was Darren Wingham. The show was hosted, written and researched by me, Dan Boniface. A special thanks to all the team at Media First and the BCF Group for supporting the development of this podcast. To learn more about the management, leadership, training and coaching that the BCF Group offer, visit thebcfgroup.co.uk or get in touch by emailing hello@thebcfgroup.co.uk. Finally, a special thanks to our exceptional guest today, who you can contact via the BCF group.